Hi and welcome. This time around I've got a project where I purchased this Brown and Sharpe micro mesh permanent magnet vise, and I got it really inexpensively, but the thing is completely seized, so it may not be salvageable. Fortunately the price was right. It was fairly inexpensive, but it needs a lot of work and some love and attention to bring it back into health if possible. Hopefully the magnets inside haven't been damaged, because looks like coolant got into the magnet. So we're going to disassemble this guy, and maybe people want to see what it looks like inside. So I've loosened the two edge guides, and all kinds of what looks like grinding dust and crud is falling out. Look at that. This was not well taken care of. So we're going to have to completely disassemble this guy. It's just gross. Look at that. I don't know why when you have a really nice tool you don't take better care of it, but there you go. So I opened up the oil hole earlier, and what I found inside was that it was dry as a bone and a bunch of powder. There's also another one on the bottom. I don't know if that's an oil hole or some sort of access hole, but it took quite a lot of effort to get these guys off earlier. And I put some oil in there in hopes that it would, it was just frozen at the shaft here, but I think it might be a little more systemic than that. So next up, I think we got to try and separate the two pieces. So we're starting on the screws on the bottom, and the fact that there's rust on them is not a positive sign. But we'll see how much coolant or liquid got into this guy. I'm hoping it's better than it seems on the outside. So never a good sign when the bottom of the screws are rusted. It means that moisture got in there in some amount. Some are better than others. See if this guy taps apart or it has pins. Looks like they had a rear guard on this guy and broke the screws off inside this. So we'll have to try and extract those as well. It's really sad, to be honest. So besides being screwed, it's pinned, which is nice. Oh, look at that. That's not a good sign, is it? So there it is, opened up. Boy, it was badly mistreated. This thing is a mess inside. Look at the corrosion. The magnet pack's not looking very healthy. I guess we'll see what we can do about this, but I don't have high hopes. So I'm going to try and get this together. I've added a little bit of lube because of the massive pitting on both parts, because lubricant was obviously allowed to get in here, which is never good. So we're going to see if we can put this guy back together and see if it'll still work. I have a terrible feeling that there'll be so much friction that I won't be able to get it to work at all, because the two parts that are supposed to rub past each other have corroded so badly there's massive pitting, and I think it's going to get in the way of smooth motion there. But I guess we will find out shortly. I think the other thing the coolant did was dissolve the epoxy or whatever it is that was in between the magnets in the magnet pack, because there was all this gritty stuff in the bottom that you saw me brushing out earlier. Yeah, you get a good piece of steel in. Look at that. I can't even move that. Flip it over and I can get it off. Still need to clean all the grit off this. I probably shouldn't have got it anywhere near this, but anyways, so there's my preliminary freeing up of the motion. It does work. It's really stiff in the middle. It's going to need an extension on the handle in order to get past the middle here, because that's really rough. And other than that, it seems to work all right. The bottom's not flat, the top's not flat with a bunch of scratches. So the two holes that had the broken off screws, I got those out. One, I was able to use a screw remover with reverse, basically a left-handed drill bit. The other one I had to drill out and pull the pieces out and re-tap. That one was much more badly damaged. It was rusted in there. So I've been cleaning off some of the surface rust. I can't get these pins out, which would be nice, because I want to run the milling cutter across here. And I think these originally were designed to have the brass bars, or maybe not. There's brass missing out of this, so I can't really tell. but I think that some of this was as a sliding mechanism to make it smoother. But these are so badly damaged, and this is so badly damaged. I'm going to try and get a facing cutter and just go down the center here so that it has a smooth path, because as I rotate this, I can feel this catch on these ridges. So maybe a mistake, we'll find out. There's 2 screws on this guy. There's top one that says oil and a bottom one. And at first I thought the bottom one might be, its job might be as an oil plug. If you want to change oil, maybe this whole thing got filled up with oil to keep coolant out or whatnot, but I no longer think that's the case. That bottom one, the bottom screw, holds the shaft in right here. And there's an O-ring that I need to replace. And I might take some Scotch-Brite to this, see if I can clean up some of this corrosion on here. It's like everything else here, is pretty bad. This thing must have filled up with coolant, which I think dissolved the epoxy or whatever it is they use to hold the magnets together, because there's powder on the bottom. So here's the magnetic pack, of which the bottom I knew was going to be in really bad shape, and it is. The interesting thing about the design of this guy is that when this thing is in operation, the magnetic pack, when you close it, the magnetic pack pops up and it's magnetically adhered to the top, so it's not rubbing on the bottom at all, which is why they didn't need to finish the bottom. But we will clean out some of the nastiness out of there. All the rust and coolant leftovers. Got a hardened bushing in here. I thought it was originally brass, but it's not. It looks like it's just a hardened insert. This thing is surprisingly light. It feels almost like it's aluminum. Maybe it is aluminum. I kind of think it is. I don't think this is cast iron. This thing is really light. Huh. Interesting. That explains the hardened bushing. The bottom's aluminum, so couldn't take the wear, so they put a hardened bushing in for this to rotate on. Interesting. Maybe aluminum to keep the weight down, or so it wouldn't get magnetized. I don't know. I mean, I guess magnetization would be a real problem, and you could end up with all kinds of filings and whatnot sticking to it, so maybe that's a common thing. I don't know, I've never worked on one of these before. So because the magnetic pack pops up and holds onto the top plate when it slides back and forth, I think originally these little plastic spacers kept the magnets off to keep the friction down, but they're so badly damaged from all the coolant and the pitting and everything and the corrosion that built up in here, that I'm going to take a milling cutter and go down the center of this and see if I can clean it up. It may totally hose me, and it may make this have so much friction it's not particularly usable. The other side also is relieved, so it only makes contact in a couple spots, but still I may get hosed on this deal, but there's not much I can do. I'm going to try and take off as little material as possible on the mill, but there's really no other solution at this point that I can see, because again, the amount of drag going across here, it catches, and I can't move it at all. So I used the hydraulic press to push the pins out. Originally I tried to put some flats on them to rotate them out, and that's when I discovered they were all the way through. I thought they were blind pins, so fortunately they went all the way through. Just when they ground the top, they made them match so perfectly you couldn't see, which is really kind of cool in and of itself. So now I'm going to run a couple passes across this and get this thing perfectly flat, since it's a mess. I'd show you the milling part, but it's putting this phenolic stuff, just makes little wisps of stuff that gets all over the place, and it's statically charged, so it'll get, I tried it and it gets all over the lens, so I'll bring you back when it's done. So interesting observation, this is a sandwich of materials, but the outer skin here, this thin part here, is a separate, I didn't see till I cleaned it up, that this is hardened steel, which makes sense because you'd want to have your fences to be accurate. So anyways, I discovered that, caught the burr with my finger, of course. So I took off as little material as I possibly could to get a flat surface. I pushed the pins out, so I need to get some new pins and push them in. So I got the new O-ring for this guy. Actually, that's not quite the right size. I think we're thinking smaller. Sort of matched when it was stretched out, but I think the other one really is stretched out. So I think the hazard fraught. I have a O-ring replacement kit here, so we can put a new O-ring on this guy because the old one was leaking like a sieve. It's interesting because neither of them are particularly thick, so not a great design. This groove's a little thicker than it should be, I think. Anyways, maybe they have a different thickness O-ring, or it's custom because it's not part of the standard SAE set, so, or it's a little wide. Anyways, so the closest pin fit I've got to the originals here are these guys, and they're about a 1/4 inch longer. So I'm going to leave a 1/4 inch proud at the top and press these guys in, and then I'll come by with a really light pass with my milling face mill, which I know is not ideal, but I don't have a surface grinder, so I can't take this thing down perfectly like it was. Someday perhaps. I just want to make this guy usable, so yeah, we're going to take a really light pass and make them flush. Alright, so let's try a reassembly here. So the magnet pack, and what poor shape it is, goes in here. This guy lines up with that pack like so. It's held in place by a screw, which seems to have walked. Oh, here it is. So the shaft here is held in place by this guy. So we've got some pretty smooth action here now. This guy gets filled with oil. Very smooth, nice. Much better than it was by an order of magnitude easily. Okay, next up, put the oil set screw cover in. And I'm going to pop the top on. Of course, the magnet just hops up. I think I got it backwards. I did. So I got this guy back together, added some lube between the magnets and the smooth side of the back side of this guy, and I don't think this guy is anywhere near as smooth as it was when it was new, because among other things what they did is they took the phenolic and left it slightly proud of the steel of the top so that the magnetic field would be reduced somewhat, because it actually, I got this on wrong the first time, and the only way I could get it out was to tap the magnet with a soft mallet sideways until it pushed off, because I could not budge it. It was essentially welded to it. But now, I haven't screwed this back together yet, but even when it's off, it's on a little bit, which is not ideal. But when it's on, it is really on. It is not going anywhere. So I mostly got it back working, but I still have to dust off the top, and I have to screw the top back on from the bottom. Okay, so here's the final project. I faced the top with a face mill, and unfortunately these hardened pins caused grief on my inserts, because I was using a positive rake cutter because I wanted to get a good finish, but they really hosed me. Plus the edges are also hardened. the center is soft. So that kind of worked me. The this fence is not an original, unfortunately, and doesn't fit particularly well. This one is possibly an original because the slots match. This one, only one of the slots matches. If I had a surface grinder, I could dust the top and get it nice, flat, and square, but I don't, so that's not an option. And I got the inside working somewhat smoothly. It's probably not as smooth as it ultimately could be when it was new, when they had little spacers, but probably got some additional magnetic field strength out of this. So here is a piece of steel, and turn this guy on, and there you go. So I think the project all in all was successful. I think I wish the vendor had told me about how badly corroded it was inside, but they claimed they didn't know anything about it. It had clearly been filled with coolant for a very long time. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you found it interesting, and hope to see you next time.